A contentious end to the race in Auto Club has certainly riled some feathers. And while there could be a rivalry brewing, we have to remember that today's race marks the first road course on the schedule. It's time to switch gears, quite literally. Will it be the same faces up front? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 3 of the ultimate Conquest Online Racing's Throwback Indycar Series, presented by 9-4 Motorsports. And you'll see it all live here on the global SimRacing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Wei-Han Chan. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beer. The old cliche is that everything is bigger in Texas. This track is no exception considering how much has been invested into this impressive facility. To better understand the circuit, why don't we head on over to the track guide. Welcome to Circuit of the Americas. The cliche of everything's bigger in Texas rings true for this track in the Lone Star State. Built specifically for Formula One, the number of corners, circuit length, safety features, and general track amenities immediately set this place apart from almost every racing course in the United States. Of the 3 layouts available, the most widely used is the Grand Prix circuit, which tops out at a whopping 20 turns along nearly 3.5 miles. Many of them have been modeled after well-known sections of European tracks such as Silverstone, Hockenheim, and Istanbul. But compared to those venues, this place still has lots of unique challenges. Turn 1 in particular features the largest elevation change from the lap and culminates in a blind and sharp hairpin. The penultimate corner is just as tough, with its off-camber apex and sudden drop forcing many to escape to the paved runoff on the outside. And though it was meant to lure F1, many other series have now raced here, ranging from IndyCar to WEC, IMSA, and even V8 supercars. Track days are also common, with the SCCA running all types of amateur events to allow up-and-coming drivers to feel what it's like to battle on the same tarmac as Vettel and Hamilton have. With this track, American race fans finally get to experience a purpose-built course made in the modern day. Texas went bigger and better, and in the process, raised the bar for their peers. There really are some stunning views around this place. There's quite a bit of elevation change to give you those good views, Wei-Han, but tell us a little bit more about the circuit.
Absolutely, and I think we have come to what is the home of American Grand Prix racing, where the pinnacle of motorsport lives in this great nation. This is also the home circuit of Sean Ambrose, as I've come to understand, so I must try my best not to disappoint. It is located in Elroy, within the city limits of Austin, Texas, the heart of the Lone Star State. This is this motorsport icon of the modern day, a triumph of motorsports that has come to overcome so many odds to exist and thrive the way it does today. From complex construction challenges in history to regulations, to even its imposing size and layout against the terrain it's built on. There is an iconic observation tower by the amphitheater between turns 15 and 19 that stands so tall at 77 meters. It gives you a great stunning view of the area. Word has it that you can probably see Sean's old house from up there. This is an extremely technical circuit, rather uncharacteristic of many other tracks in the US. Therefore, there is a requirement for cars to be set up well mechanically. This circuit measures 5.515 kilometers long, 20 corners, which is a huge circuit in its own right. We are doing 44 laps tonight, so this track will be hard on tires, so expect to see a more measured approach towards tire management than usual. It was meticulously reproduced during the previous iRacing dynasty in 2014, so this is where we can all realize our racing fantasies. Now, despite polarizing opinions of this place in the sim racing world, I think there is a certain unique feeling of accomplishment that only the drivers who can endure the COTA torment, as I like to put it, may relate to.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be one that takes a bit to master, especially with how many corners and the length, like you mentioned. It is a tough one. Before we get to the championship, we want to remind you of our sponsors. This series is brought to you by Midwest Simulations. You watch the track, we'll watch the rest. Use the promo code THROWBACK for $5 off a set of their Spotlight visual spotting systems. Find out more at midwestsim.com. The Top Qualifier Championship also is brought to you by D2 Race Designs. They specialize in creating personalized and customized sim racing peripherals, as well as providing the RC racing community items that make their days at the track more organized and efficient. The season's top qualifier will win a customized button box, all thanks to the kind folks at D2 Race Designs. We'll go over that in just a second. Before we do, let's look at the Racing Championship, the Drivers' Championship in this series. The points right now have Chris Stouffer with 2 wins up at the top easily. Paul Jenkins trailing by a whole 40, so quite a bit to catch up on. But I do not see Stouffer here today. This will be a great chance for them to try and run him down a little bit. Brugelli, Bluen, and Bennett round out your top 5 with a pretty close fight between all 3 of them there, trying to sort out the final spot on the podium. So still a lot to fight for, still very early in the season as well. Of course, we have race details just in case we have viewers who've never watched this series before. Wei Han, why don't you run us down exactly what's involved in today's race?
So, of course, this being a third of 20 rounds of this Throwback Indycar Series and also the first of the road courses, we are running, of course, the Dallara IR05, the first IndyCar we've had in the iRacing service. 44 laps here and 1 fast repair tonight, as well as custom fixed setups.
So drivers can get back out there and get racing if they get any sort of damage with that free repair. It should be helpful, though granted, we don't expect too many people to hit walls considering all the runoff they have around here. Qualifying is underway. This championship, they award points according to your qualifying position. And the one with the most points at the end of the season wins that button box, of course. Right now, Brandon Schoen is our highest qualifier, currently on the provisional pole. They only get 4 laps around here, and so far, his 3 laps that he's put in has only had 1 count. That's one of the things we haven't talked about here, Wei Han, is the off tracks around this place. All that paved runoff certainly brings temptation with it, I guess you could say.
Oh, absolutely. I think the challenge that drivers will have to, overcome is, despite the fact that, going off track here doesn't necessarily cause you to lose pace. It does add up to your incident points, and it is something that we all try to avoid doing.
Thankfully, there is no incident limit in this series, but as you can see, it disqualifies your lap here in the qualifying session. Brian Beard and Frankenfield, the guy who we were talking about earlier, who lost out on a potential victory in Auto Club due to an unfortunate accident on the last lap, are both second and third, but they are not out on the track. It looks like Brian is done with his qualifying. He set 3 laps. They get 4 that they can set, but obviously if he goes back out, his out lap will be counted as that 4th one. Frankenfield has only 1. So he could, well, no, he can't get back out because we're only 1 minute left to go. At this point, I'm trying to see, Dan Guerin is in. He's sitting in 4th. John Garrett is in 5th, but he's a whole 1.1 seconds back from our pole sitter. It does not look likely that Schoen is going to be overtaken. And I'd say, Wei Han, with him coming around, we're probably going to be seeing him complete this 4th lap and grab the pole regardless.
Yep, with Paul Jenkins coming along to the start-finish line, he sets a lap time of what would appear to be 1 minute 52, which might not allow him any contention up here.
And we see Nate Burke as well coming to the line, and he stays in 11th, even though he improves on that lap. What about Brennan as he comes to the line? Looks like that one was not quicker, and he's not going to have time for another as the clock is down to 0. That is going to be it for our qualifying. Our order is set. Let's go through your grid today. Brandon Schoen, as we mentioned, on the pole, so he'll take max points in that D2 Race Designs Qualifier Championship. Brian Beard starts in 2nd with Chad Frankenfield starting in 3rd. Dan Guerin will be P4 today, and John Garrett in 5th place. Jeff Webker starts P6, Paul Jenkins in 7th, and Takeshi Kita in 8th place. Andy Urich starts 9th today, and Richard Swavely in 10th. Wei Han?
With the remaining drivers on the grid, Nate Burke in 11th and Robert Bloom in 12th. Jose Figueroa would begin from 13th and Peter Brennan from 14th. Of course, we've got two drivers who might not have set a qualifying lap time of theirs, Eric Jeffers and Brian Greeley. They round out your starting grid of 16 drivers here tonight.
We have two drivers that are our focus today for our onboards. Brian Beard in the number 5, sitting in second, of course, is one of them. And you can see with his front row view, not a lot in front of him right now. Richard Swavely, however, Rick Swavely, excuse me, he is, I guess, Richard here in the sim, but they've called him Rick, I guess, in our notes. So same guy, different name. He'll start 10th today. There's his onboard on the number 46. Now, looking to see, I do not see Eric Jeffers out on the track, so I think we're going to have 15 starters out here as the Porsche pace car now leads the field away down the back stretch, just about a third of a pace lap that they'll run around here. Also interesting to note about race, we did have 2 penalties, one of which given to Frankenfield, a 1-point penalty given to him in the championship for the incident on the lap 10 at Auto Club. And then they assessed, I guess there was only 1 penalty rather. There was no penalty assessed in the end after a bit of deliberation over the final lap incident where Frankenfield and Stouffer came together and Frankenfield got unceremoniously shoved out of the way. They deemed it a racing incident. They've got just a couple more corners to go, Wei-Han, and then we have 44 laps of racing today.
Oh yes, we do. At a place like this, it is going to be a race of attrition. Not only going to be difficult on the cars, but also on the drivers as they have to tackle this one challenging circuit for a total of possibly 90 minutes.
We expect 2 pit stops today with their limited fuel cells compared to the real cars. These old Indy cars from the early 2000s, which you're able to run here on iRacing. Didn't get to run at COTA because they had already swapped over to the new vehicle by this time. Let's see what they've got in store for us today because the pace car is in. Schoen has control. He's bringing them around the final corner. Is he going to wait or is he going to take off immediately? He's packing them up off the turn. And now he's off like a shot. Green flag is out. Schoen has a leg up on Brian Beard coming down to turn 1. You can sometimes have problems into this sharp hairpin with that very tough to see apex around the crest. And so far, so good. It looks like they're clean, Wei-Han.
Absolutely right. Everyone making through the first sector, absolutely cleaning out. They come to this S section that is reminiscent of Silverstone. And of course, the challenge with this part is going to be the rather less visible end of each corner, which will bring some challenges to the driver. They make it through this S section.
Heading down towards turn 10, Schoen still leading the way over Brian Beard. In both qualifying and in the warm-up, it seemed like the top 2 had quite a margin over the rest of the field. But Dan Guerin, who sits in 3rd right now, is trailing close behind Beard and is going to get a handy little tow. This is looking good as he ducks to the inside. Beard does not go defensive. He's going to let him have it. Let's see how hard he brakes, though, as they come up to turn 12, one of the more popular places to try and pass. He is good on the brakes. We got a car off in the background, though. That looks like Jeff Wubker, who gets a little bit into the grass, woes it up in time in the paved runoff, and comes back in about 6th place.
Coming to this section of different, a combination of a couple of hairpins, also tight cornering radiuses. Brandon Schoen still leads this race. Of course, good battling here between Dan Garrett and Brian Beard.
Beard holds on to that second. Guerin couldn't quite get it away from him. That slowed both of them up quite a bit because as they cross the line for the first time, Schoen has a lead of about 1.7 seconds. I'm sure he's loving that. You can visibly see the gap there from above as we watch them head back into turn 1. I believe we're going to have all 15 cars be able to finish this first lap, so that's good news.
Yes, will look like so. Now his gap has it still remains at 1.62, the lead he has to the rest of the field. It was great driving by him throughout this one lap, and he comes along this part of the circuit.
As they climb up the hill, staying consistent. Beard at least is trying to keep him honest. He's going to want a better exit out of turn 10 though this time. This is where he got into trouble with Garin getting right up underneath him. They see Schoen coming around. Now as we watch Garin, has he figured it out? Yes, he has. That was a good exit, though looks like Beard is unfortunately still going to give quite a tow to that number 08. Over the crests they come and into the braking zone of 12. He closes in. Just a little bit of a look from Garin, but not enough, and he's actually going to go wide at the apex as well, so that'll deny him for now.
Coming upon them, few more hairpins, and also the multiple apex corner that will come ahead of that. Possible overtaking opportunities to come. Gap between them sits at half a second.
So let's jump a little bit farther back in the field. I see something of a battle going on between Wubker in 6th, Jenkins in 7th, and Kita in 8th. The 3-car train here in the mid-pack over the blind penultimate corner and down into the final hairpin. This could be critical because they get a good run up to the great passing spot on turn 1 here, Wei-Han.
Absolutely right. Kita making use of the slipstream provided by Jenkins as they come upon the braking zone, uphill braking zone into turn 1. A little bit of an attempt there, but unfortunately no moves made as they come across that apex. Now coming upon the S's once again.
And you could see ahead of them, it got awful close between Garrett and Frankenfield. Chad, ever since losing that 3rd place on the first lap, is seemed to fall backwards. We've also got a car in the pits, Peter Brennan. I'm not exactly sure what happened to him. Oh, and we had a spin. Dan Garin. Garin turns it around up and off of turn 9, and he gets it going, but he falls to 8th in the process. Let's look at the replay and figure out what happened here. Can't tell if he hit the curb or if he started to lose it before that. Watching from the replay here. It looked to me like it started to go beforehand, Wei-Han.
Yeah, I think it was just a matter of losing the rear end right through almost the apex of that corner. It wouldn't appear that he had hit that curb. So I think it might have just been a self-inflicted.
He's going to manage to get one over on Kita, so that's one position up now to 7th place. Slows Kita back into that group that he was with before with Swavely, and Swavely goes off. I think he's having connection problems. He's trying to get out of the way of everybody. So he is pulled to a halt off the track and is not moving. No, we are past the point at which the stewards are willing to throw a caution here on a road course. They have to do it manually if we get a caution here on the road side of things. Obviously different from the ovals here on iRacing. But they only said within the first 3 laps would they be willing to throw one if we find an incident that is necessary. I'd say that that one slips through the cracks on that. So we take a look at 5th position where Wubker and Jenkins are still very close together.
Yeah, sure they are, and the gap between them is 1.2 seconds. Now they make their way through the S's again, possibly not going to make the mistake that the other driver had made earlier on. They come to this downhill braking zone. So this is going to be an opportunity for overtaking. So will the straight that will be coming up. Right on the nose camera of Jeb Wooker. Paul Jenkins, as he tries to find as little of a slipstream as he can from the car in front of him.
Looks like nothing gonna happen for them now. And I think we had another spin. Ooh, and there was contact with the wall for Robert Bluen, the number 96. And it's the same spot that we saw for Garin. Let's take a look at the replay. Out of turn 9, unfortunately, he doesn't just spin the car around. He finds the Armco.
Yeah, so as you have a look at him making his way through, about at this time, right through over the exit of the car. Yeah, it just broke loose right from the...
Yeah, we're going to watch him on board. This looks almost reverse of before. I think he loses it on the exit. Oh, there it goes. So just goosed it a little too hard and definitely took some damage from that. You can see it on his wing, Weihan, but I'm hoping he doesn't have anything on the suspension.
Yeah, once you have anything on the suspension, it's going to kill your car outright. Now, of course, with these cars being rather reliant on aero, at least on the road part, it is going to be a little bit difficult for him, but I think he does make the attempt, the entry into the pits to get his nose fixed.
See, it's a pretty cloudy day, so can't really see the planes flying overhead above us, but that makes for some good racing conditions. It's only 82 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface. I have to imagine it's pretty grippy. We're watching from on board Webker once again back at Paul Jenkins in this battle for fifth. Got another car in the pit. We lost Brennan earlier after he pitted. For some reason, he decided to call it a day. We're way too early on pit stops, I think. We should have a two-stop race, and it's 15 to 17 laps. I'd have to do math in reverse on my head to see what the backwards strategy would be. Yeah, this is a long stop. This is way too long to be scheduled, and in fact, Blumen's gotten out of the car, so he might also now be done after his damage as we take a look at 12th, and it looks like Richard Swavely is ahead of Vigera. I think we can get a replay on this one. Talk us through it, Weihan.
So they come upon what is this longest backstretch here, or this section of the circuit. I think the move happened along the backstretch, where Swavely made, yes, exactly this one. The move, making use of the slipstream, he goes along the inside, as we can see from the chopper camera here, and cleans off the move, leaving no trail behind as he comes around that hairpin.
And unfortunately, just as we went to the replay here, Swavely spun it out of the penultimate corner. You can see he's all alone now because Vigera is well ahead in that number 43. He just continued on around him. That bumps him up into 12th position, back where he was before. On lap 6 now. Oh, and Yerkes had a problem. Boy, it is a tough track to drive today. Number 27 off in the S's. Take a look at the replay. This is a little earlier than what's been happening before, which is the very final corner of the S's for the last two cars. That is some snap oversteer. So thankfully he's able to keep going. He didn't hit anything. Yerk now down to 9th from his issues. Going up to 5th place, Wubker ahead of Jenkins, ahead of Guerin on his climb back. He's still in 7th place. He hasn't caught anybody since he passed COTA, but he's got a buffet in front of him here, Weihan.
Sure has. Looks like a three-way possible battle pack that may emerge from this as they come along the start-finish line to begin the next lap. As we are riding with, we are observing Wubka leading this three-way pack in P5, and it is Paul Jenkins and then Garrett in 6th and 7th. They come along the hill over the first corner, and they come upon this S's.
Guerin catching up quickly. He was strong on the brakes up into the first corner. As they weave through the S's, he's closing in on Jenkins bit by bit. Get the feeling that by the time they reach the backstretch, unless we see an error from Guerin, he's going to have something. Oh, no,
here he comes.
The backstretch. Gets to the inside with that mistake from Jenkins, but now he's got to get a good exit off of turn 11 here. Maybe an over-under there for the 17. Not quite. A handy little throttle application from Dan Guerin will keep him safe, at least for now. I don't know. Is Jenkins close enough for the slipstream here? Looks like not quite is the answer. As So he'll stay behind. Oh, but there's a mistake now from Guerin, who takes it in deep into the corner. Almost hands the spot right back. He keeps that 6th place, but he's got some time to make up on Wubker now from that.
As it does, as this is a succession of hairpins and also this multi-apex corner coming right up. Guerin, brilliant driving by him. He's gotten a position gain from where he was previously. I do apologize for background noise on my end. No planes here on track today, as there's going to be Dan Guerin up a position by the end of this lap. Ever so close comes Paul Jenkins, but Darren cleans up this lap with a position gain. He sits up in P6.
Got about 2.2 seconds to make up to Wubker. So he's got a ways to go now after all those battles there with Paul Jenkins. We're on lap 8 out of the 44. Again, we're expecting pit stops to happen somewhere between laps 15 and 17. So we're going to look at our leader one more time since we haven't put the cameras on shown in quite a while. And you know, Wei-Han, even though he's pulled a bit of a gap, it's about 3.5 seconds back to Beard. I have to say, he's not really dropping him that quickly. I think Brian's keeping him a bit honest.
Yeah, well, I like to think that perhaps Brandon is having a race of his own at this point, because when I guess when you have enough a set distance ahead of everyone else, there is a kind of zone that you enter into, which allows you to kind of not exactly have to push the car any further, but where the emphasis is on trying to maintain your pace and ensuring that everything goes fine throughout.
Ooh, we had another spin. Jose Viguera. Looks like he lost it on his own in the S's, so I'm not sure if we really want to replay, but lost him a ton of time on Swavely, who he was catching. Now, are we seeing some damage on the car? Looks like it's clean, so I don't think he hit any of the curbs or anything at all. They'll just keep continuing on. We've lost 2 drivers. Bluen hit the wall. Brennan, we're not sure what happened. He's decided to call it a day prematurely. Almost lost Swavely for a moment, which let's put the cameras on him, one of our spotlighted drivers for today. See what the number 46 is experiencing. What do you do in this situation, Wei-Han, when you know you've lost a lot of time and some of it's not your fault? He obviously pulled over to try and get his connection sorted. How do you keep yourself motivated?
As simple as this, I probably don't. I'll just try, I guess, maintain a consistent pace throughout the race. But I think if your abilities are kind of up there, you would, if you're able to close up the gap with the other drivers, that will bring a lot of benefit to you. Swavely sits in P12 and he is 4 seconds behind the next car ahead of him, Brian Greenlee, in 11th. So quite a lot of ground that he has to cover up, as he's just made a little bit of a lockup coming through turn 1.
That battle for 5th place, well, Guerin has already run down Wubker. Didn't take him that many laps. It has gone from 2 seconds to down to 0.3, and a mistake from Wubker coming off of turn 12 is going to hand it over on a silver platter. Guerin back up into the top 5. After qualifying in 4th, though, I have a feeling that he wants more than that. He knows that he's got the pace to get farther up the field. Fellow commentator Bill Zahn nicknamed him Dandy Dan Guerin, who is not having a very dandy race necessarily, but is certainly making lemonade out of these lemons that he's been given on trying to climb back up the order. Behind him, it's getting close now between Wubker and Jenkins. Seems like Guerin has brought his friend along, and Jenkins could get himself into 6th.
Here they come into turn 1. Oh, a mistake by contact between Wubker and Jenkins, and also a spinner by that guy in front of
Guerin. Yeah.
Yes, Dan Guerin. So, well, what an unfortunate turn of events just within a span of a few seconds.
There you see both spins right there. If we want an interesting viewpoint for this replay, Takeshi Kita gets 3 positions in 1 corner. This is, watch this. It's birthday and Christmas all at once.
Oh, well, he was so fortunate to make it through not 2 but 3 cars at one go.
How well can he hold them back? Because we know that Guerin is quick, obviously, and then those other 2 drivers will be slightly out of position. Takeshi Kita, who started in 8th and was in 8th at the start of that lap, is now up to 5th position. So probably won't really want to hand them back, at least not very quickly, as they come down to the end of the back stretch. And once again, Guerin finding it tough to get the car wound up into there.
It is finders keepers for Kita as he sits comfortably at this, maybe comfortable enough, up in P5. 3 positions from where he began from qualifying. Then Guerin behind him is a whole second behind him. So I do believe a rather consistent margin that he can maintain with the next few laps.
Guerin sure closed in fast on Wubker, so I'm expecting him to be able to do something with Kita right now at about 0.8 of a second. He's still got a little work to do. They come across and start lap 11 for these 3. Up into turn 1. Very different line to Kita up ahead of him, who was in very shallow. But then you see Guerin coming out very shallow as well in comparison. One of those interesting things that I've noticed about this track over the year, Wei-Han, it seems like you can kind of take slightly different lines into a number of these corners.
You can take drastically different lines through some of the corners. I think most of them would be turns 1 and also the hairpin right before the backstretch, which is this corner that is going to come up for the drivers. Who's this? Dan Guerin and Kita making the move, jostling, and Dan made the move, or he just makes the move up into P5 and around the hairpin. A great driving by him, but now it is his turn to offer his own slipstream to Kita and Jenkins behind them.
So can Kita run him back down and try and take it right back? They're coming to the end of the backstretch. This is where they get on the binders, and it looks like it is not to be. This time much tidier down to that apex for Dan Guerin. Back up to 5th for him. Boy, it's a long ways to the next driver now. After his spin about a lap and a half ago, he has 10 seconds to make up on John Garrett, who rides in 4th.
So imagine the kind of pressure that Guerin must be facing now, because he's coming upon this final part of the circuit. The final 2 corners, these would be in real life Formula 1. This would be some of the more prime overtaking spots when your car is close enough, especially with the use of DRS, which unfortunately these cars do not have. Guerin in P5, and he leads the drivers behind him by just under 0.8 of a second.
And Kita's got company with Paul Jenkins back there too. Curious to see if Jenkins will be able to catch him and pass him. They've lost Wubker after the contact that these 2 made. Jenkins watching from behind. We're on his roll hoop. You can really see how many direction changes are in this S's sequence that Wei-Han was talking about earlier. And a little bit of a mistake from Kita, and another mistake from Jenkins as well as he spins it. So he's going to lose this spot to Jeff Wubker, who sneaks on through up into 7th.
But it picks himself up so well. In fact, just spinning back into the line. It comes along this hairpin. This sets him back a whole 6 seconds, 6 to 9 seconds, 6 seconds, behind Kita. And between them is Wubker, who has made the move up to P7.
You talked about it earlier, Wei-Han, that it seems like this is a real driver's track, that there's a satisfaction in mastering it, and it has been giving so much trouble to the drivers today. What do you think is happening exactly?
Yeah, well, I think there is this kind of there is this need for you to remain on your toes every lap, because of the fact that the corners don't exactly have the most amount of flow throughout each corner. So there's an emphasis on you having to be on your feet all the time, and understanding that maybe some things might come in terms of I guess blind apexes and stuff like that. Not exactly the most intuitive of driving experiences, which is what makes this circuit such a challenge.
Oh, another spin for Swavely too. He lost it down in the stadium section, but he also gets it going without hitting anything. Should be seeing some of the drivers try to come in pretty soon because we're already on lap 13. All of our drivers out on track are still on the lead lap, though. Brandon Schoen has a little ways to go before he gets to Viguera, who is riding in 13th and is about a minute 30 behind him. Chad Frankenfield as well, mourning the loss of the win last week. Curious to know how he feels, too, about the steward's decision not to assess a penalty after he was hit from behind. They deemed that he had slowed a little bit coming off the corner, and that's what caught out Stouffer in the process. Still
average gap between. Sorry.
I was just going to say third place is going to be handy. Few points for the number 2 car. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the average gap between positions 1, 2, and 3 would sit at around 4 seconds. So it would appear that so early in the race, and already I think that the gap has already solidified at this front end of the field.
Well, it hasn't solidified behind them. I'm looking at Dan Guerin. Remember I said that number 10 seconds before? It's down to 8.8. He's chipping away at it. He's still got more than half the race to go. So I don't think this is over yet for that number 08. Again, he is chasing John Garrett up ahead of him. Now, even if he can catch John Garrett, it'll be a very tall ask for him to get up to Frankenfield because there's another 8 seconds up to third place. So very big margins now once you get back into this group. Schoen still not having much of those worries, though he is continuing to drop Brian Beard by tiny margins. It's up to 4.1 seconds. You can see in the tower to your left. So right on board, watching from the 98. If he wins today, well, actually, I shouldn't say if. It's anybody who wins today will be our first new winner of the season since Stouffer took the first 2 rounds. The big question mark now is who is going to be the next new winner.
Brandon Schoen holding his ground exceptionally well all night long. He began from pole and he's still in the race lead. So I think he would be rather hard pressed to keep this going for the next 2/3 of the race. He comes along this first corner. And I think this is one of those places where you have as you head up the corner, you have this sensation that you're almost taking off. Coming up upon the S's, with no cars in sight, it is all about trying to find his own racing line through these where some of the corners could well be decreasing radius.
And with it being now lap 15, the pit window is officially open. Brandon Schoen could have come in last time if he wanted to and still be safe, but looks like he's elected to stay out at least one more. Not seeing any other drivers having come in. In fact, I'm seeing who is the next closest. It's like, yeah, Nate Burke is down in 10th, and he's not going to come in. Then you've got Greenlee, Swavely, and Viguera all on the lead lap, still yet to come up to the pit entry. There's Greenlee on screen now in the orange and white number 38. He's also decided not to take it in. Looks like a lot of drivers going to try and go at least a little bit longer than is possible. Swavely stays out. Viguera might actually go a lap down pretty soon within the next lap or 2 because Schoen is quickly arriving behind him. And now he's not because Schoen is actually going to come into the pits. This looks like our first scheduled stop of the day. Let's see what kind of time the 98 can get down on pit lane. Down at pit lane speed. Beard stays out. Frankenfield stays out. Garrett does as well. Is anybody else going to join our leader? All the way down to his pole position pit stall. He does take tires. And off like a shot with about a 10-second stop. That's a good one. He's joined by Dan Guerin, also coming into pit. A little bit of traffic there that we saw exiting into our former leader, Wubker pits. I think Schoen came out just in front of Takeshi Kita. Thankfully did stay in front of him, so shouldn't be slowed down too much by that. Guerin is out just as Wubker reaches his stall. Andy Yerk also pitting this lap.
Yerk in the pits as we observe making a move into his pit stall. So having a look at the different pit timings by the different drivers, we can see an average pit stall time of 9 seconds. And what is his time? He's done it 9.2 seconds, so that is quite an average pit stop time, just enough for you not to lose too much of your momentum.
Yeah, no dramas yet. Now we're watching Beard to see if he goes in, and yes, he does. So does Viguera, just ahead of him. Again, a lap down, and he's actually very slow into the pits, almost holds up Brian Beard. He's being joined by Frankenfield. He is in. John Garrett is also going to be pitting as he enters in. That means the next driver around is Brandon Schoen. He had a 4-second gap over Beard. Not expecting Beard to be able to catch him in the stops, but let's see, Wei-Han, whether or not he actually makes up time.
Let's have a look at this. Brandon Schoen along the main stretch, the grid straight. He comes beyond the pit exit, and this is, I think, it is quite a big gap that he's managed to cut ahead of all the cars who've made it out of the pit. So no real competition at all.
Yeah, it doesn't make up any time. It stays at about 4 seconds. Brian Beard actually had to get by the lapped car Viguera. I almost wonder if that is why we saw Schoen pit when he did, so that he didn't get caught out by the lap traffic. So have Takeshi Kita pitting out rather. A little bit of a longer stop, just slightly longer, 10.3 seconds I'm seeing for Kita. He'll return in 6th place. See, Nate Burke is pitting. That leaves Brian Greenlee, who is also in. That'll be everybody. And I must have had a glitch on my timing and scoring, because I'm seeing Frankenfield not having stopped in his stall. I don't believe that's correct, because he's not... Well, has he gained time? I'm trying to figure this out. But he's gained a little bit of time on Brian Beard, but it's not a huge margin, so that must have been a mistake from Brian Beard. I'm going back to check real quick to see if there was something I missed, if he had an off or what. I'm not seeing anything. I just think Brian maybe got held up by the lap traffic of Viguera, and that unfortunately not only cost him time to our leader, but could potentially allow Chad Frankenfield to now run him down. Also, we had a little bit of a spin from Kita, just a self-spin. The number 30 lost it on the end of the back stretch and has got it going. Don't really need a replay. Dan Guerin, though, look at this, Wei-Han. Look at the gap on the left-hand side of our screens here. Remember that it was that 10-second gap before. It's almost down to 5 seconds now. He's coming fast.
Absolutely being on fire, most likely. Comes along the grid straight as well. And what would be more jarring is the gap that he has ahead of Kita, which is around 11 seconds. So it is indicative of his pace at this time. So gap closes ever so progressively. 5.5 seconds still at this point. It drops to 5.4, 5.3 as he makes his way through the S's.
Clearly that car is hooked up. Well, I guess it's fixed setup, so the driver's hooked up, if anything, as Dan has just been doing great today on trying to make up for some errors. The 08 heading down into turn 11 and then on to the long backstretch. You see these open wheel cars get pretty fast down this long stretch. Let's see how fast he gets it going. It's already up to 150 now. You know, F1 obviously gets going down here, but an IndyCar is an interesting beast. It's heavier, but it's got a very powerful engine. 170 miles an hour before he has to brake down into turn 12. Gets it wound up to just a little over 60 miles an hour, and then continues on through one of the more technical portions of the lap.
Coming to the combination of hairpins and also this 5 apex right-hander. I think this would be the corner that is supposed to be reminiscent of the one at Istanbul, because of pulling high G-forces. And now he makes his left turn towards the final two corners, prime overtaking zones as well. As these corners also all about your ability to carry your pace through. And he comes along to complete lap 19. His gap with between himself and John Garrett sits at 5 seconds, and right now as we speak, it's gone a little under 5 seconds. And I think in a matter of a couple of laps, he should be within attacking distance.
I think you're right. He's certainly been looking quicker pretty consistently. You're also right about that corner mimicking Istanbul, the track in Turkey. And fun note about that, though, that's where that tower you mentioned is. Apparently, officially, I think they call it Rattlesnake Tower, but I think I'm more partial to the fan name that it's garnered, which is the Mullet. I feel like that's more iconic.
Yeah, I think there's even a rock band amphitheater around that area, towards the base of the tower.
Yeah, and see, that just makes the Mullet name more appropriate, right? It's a rock band. Yeah. Well, this is Sean, who's certainly a rock star today because he's up to 7.3 seconds over Brian Beard, who has held Frankenfield back for what it's worth. Remember, Frankenfield caught up a little bit after the pit stops and got it down to 2.6 seconds. Well, that hasn't changed, really. It's staying put. So if Frankenfield wants to get up to second place, he's going to have to work a little bit harder than that. And we're getting close to the halfway point now. So I think we've got, where is Greenlee in comparison to Sean? Oh, looks like we'll have a second car lap down soon as we're riding on board with Greenlee. Can't quite see it in the mirrors now, but Sean is going to start getting bigger in those.
I think with an advantage that comes with a slightly smaller field size that we have right here tonight, I think the lead drivers will have less issues trying to figure out their way through the maze of lap traffic. Now Sean has just made his way around the final that happened, and he is on this stretch together with Greenlee.
Is indeed. There you see, both in the same picture now. Man, this has got to be a little bit demoralizing for Greenlee too, knowing that he's just about to halfway, not even quite to halfway, and he's going to be lapped, so he might actually go 2 laps down by the end of this thing. That's got to be hard to keep yourself motivated.
Yeah, then again, I think that's part of the racing experience here at Circuit of the Americas. I think it's one of those places where it kind of exacerbates all kinds of be it good or bad that you're feeling at this place, whether or not you're on top of yourself. As we see that blue flag move in favor of Brandon Sean. Of course, a gentleman move there by Greenlee.
Chip just pulled right out of the way. He knew he wasn't battling anybody. He's not close to Nate Burke, who is the next one up in 10th position. We've also lost Richard Swavely. I don't think we noted that. So we're now down to 3 cars that have retired and only 12 still running. Dan Guerin once more. He's going to come across the line yet again. Why don't we pull up a little lap comparison between himself and Garrett? This is the 68 and the 08. Because we've had a few laps now between the pit stops and where they are. This will really give us an idea of what kind of inroads he's making. It looks like they were a little bit different on pit stops, so that's why you get those weird differences there on 16 and 17. But 0.6 on 18, half a second on 19, and about 0.2 on lap 20. So I wonder if Garrett saw the gap coming down and figured he's got to start hustling.
That certainly isn't a good sign. But I think the gap has only progressively reduced to 4.2 seconds. Because John is still ahead of Dan, but it has been, I think, a couple of laps since it came down from 5 seconds. So I think perhaps this might be something that will motivate Garrett to continue hustling through the next 1 hour.
Yeah, that 4-second gap is certainly a lot smaller than the 10-second gap it once was. In fact, he can now see him in a lot of portions with a decent straight. Not necessarily through here in the stadium section. We have all these tight little twisty turns. And then they exit out here onto Turkey. Ooh, and wow, Dan was very fast through that portion. He cut a full second off in just that part of the track alone. So clearly that is where he is strong in comparison to the number 68 down into the line. What's the lap difference going to be this time? Looks like a 49 flat for Garrett. Garin has a 47.8, so 1.2 seconds quicker that time by.
Garin around the apex of turn 1, and I think that's kind of equalized the gap he has with Garrett to 3.2 seconds. As we look at how he finesses his way around along the SS, this is one of those sections that does require you to kind of preempt, especially this exact corner, preempt the kind of decrease in radius that comes as you come to the exit. You have to suddenly reduce your speed mid-corner or turn even harder. Hard on the brakes, he comes to this hairpin, does that perfectly, and he is now on his top speed run down the backstretch.
Used to reel him in. It's down to 2.6 now, up to John Garrett, and there you can see from this perspective how far away he is. A little bit of a speck here from this camera angle, but as once again just seems to have trouble with that breaking down into the hairpin at 12, because he once again was way wide at the apex. Oh, and he almost spins it.
A mistake by Garin right along the exit of one of the hairpins.
Gonna look at the replay here. Maybe getting a little bit too anxious to gain that time. Ooh, yeah. A little hard on the throttle there.
And you must remember that these cars, whilst they do have the downforce, they don't necessarily have the weight to kind of firm the car on the ground. So it is very, very easy for it to lose the rear end. This has unfortunately reset the gap he has to Sean Garrett to right around 4 seconds, but then again he's now clambering it back.
So an unfortunate setback for him. Frankenfield, in the meantime, is starting to close in on Brian Beard a little bit. It's 1.6 seconds now. So he's nearly halved what was the gap a few laps ago. So they come onto the back stretch. We also have that one more pit stop we should be seeing somewhere between lap 30 and lap 34. So they got a ways to go before they get to that. But I almost wonder if Frankenfield can get close enough to maybe about a second here, Wayhan. I mean, he could potentially try and jump him in the pits with a good pit stop.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Because right now, the first window has closed long time ago, but the second window should open in what would be a matter of 4 to 5 laps time. So I think the advantage that comes with having 2 pit stops as opposed to just one in most road races that we see is that we have more opportunities for you to kind of kind of make things work with regards to your race pace and your positions.
See the gap as they come down the front stretch. Frankenfield's lost a little time since we looked halfway through this lap. It's back up to 2 seconds. Last time by was a 47.7 for Frankenfield, whereas Beard was a 47.8. So about a tenth slower. It may be small margins, but it's still margins in favor of Chad. We've been watching this, but really it's one of the closest fights we've got on track. I'm keeping half an eye on Garrett and Garin, which has gone back down to just over 3 seconds between them. And then we've also got a fight for 7th. Paul Jenkins and Jeff Wubker. Oh, no, we don't anymore. Jeff Wubker just spun it off of the final turn.
Oh, that was such an unfortunate move by Wubker. We have a look at the replay.
Once again, seems like drivers getting a little greedy with the right foot. Oh, and that AstroTurf certainly didn't help. Sent him around. So, interesting to note about Frankenfield, if we want to hop back to him. About this time last lap, it was 1.5 seconds. Well, it's back to 1.5 seconds. So this is looking like a bit of an ebb and a flow, like maybe Chad is stronger in certain parts than Brian and vice versa.
They are down to 1.3 seconds of a gap between themselves, and they come along the grid straight. They come upon the turn 1 again, breaking into the corner. Of course, a great exit line by both of them. Gap between them still remains, and they come along this part of the circuit.
Don't need a replay of it. I have bad news for Dan Garin fans. He spun it out of turn 10 quite a while ago, turn 11 rather, and he didn't hit anything, but that gap has gone back up to 10 seconds once again. John Garrett breathes a sigh of relief after watching it come down to a pretty small margin, and now that it is that wide, I mean, as long as Garrett's pretty smooth, I can't imagine that he could wind up losing out.
Yeah, just unfortunate by Garen having fought so hard for this many laps, only for these couple of mistakes in succession to happen to him. That's quite a lot to your ability to carry out your pace.
So that takes away another of our battles. That's 2 battles in quick succession ruined by self-made errors from the drivers. Are we going to see the same from Frankenfield and Beard? Still trying to settle out that second place. Frankenfield went a little wide through the stadium section, cost himself about 0.4 of a second. We ride on board with the leader of these two, Brian Beard, seeing how he handles this track. Sunlight now, poking through one of the holes in the many clouds we have overhead, but the temperatures continue to drop. It's down to 78 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface.
That's quite a cool temperature for tires here. But of course, in the iRacing sim, the lower the track temperatures are, generally you find that your tires would kind of last a little longer. And also offering you a little more grip throughout a longer span of time.
They've set this race in the virtual world in May, and it's a little bit before 6 o'clock. I'm kind of curious from our director's perspective. Do we get 70-degree temperatures in Texas in May? He's giving a very firm negative to us on that. So I guess the virtual world may be a little idealistic. Meanwhile, this race on screen down to 1.1 seconds. Frankenfield, this first half of the course, really his bailiwick.
Coming upon more hairpins after hairpins after hairpins. Now, I think once I think one good characteristic about COTA is that the hairpins here, it's very easy to kind of shake up your race pace with the sheer number of hairpins. But of course, you've got corners like these that kind of equalize the rhythm of the track. As you come along the last two corners, or the second to last corner and the last corner onto the nose cone of Frankenfield at this point. The gap between them sits at 1.1 seconds, and Frankenfield tries to obtain as much of a slipstream as he can from Brian Beard, and they come around turn 1.
Didn't make more than a tenth this last lap to Brian Beard, which kind of makes me wonder. We haven't seen too many drivers close on pace have to fight much. It's always been drivers trying to make their way through. So in the real world, Wei-Han, it seems like this is a track where it's tough to follow closely to the car ahead. But we've seen that on Formula One, not necessarily so much on IndyCars, and definitely not this iteration of IndyCars. So it kind of makes me think, is the wake keeping Chad from getting any closer?
Yeah, well, I think with these R05 IndyCars, being reliant on aerodynamics, once you have the reduction in air pressure in front of you with the slipstream that comes, it becomes easier for you to kind of negate whatever other factors that may cause your ability to follow through with other drivers. So it would seem that it is not that difficult to kind of keep up with the car in front of you. In part, I think it is not as you just see that around goes Frankenfield. Unfortunate incident there as he made his way around that hairpin.
And that's the third of 3 battles now taken away from a driver mistake. Frankenfield falls to about 7 seconds back of Brian Beard. He was able to close in before, and he could yet still manage to reel him back in because we've still got a few laps to go here. In fact, we have a whole pit stop left to go, which that window opening in 2 more laps. I guess it'll be telling if Frankenfield was stalled out on whether or not he pulls that 7-second gap back down to the 1 second he was at before.
Looking at the paint scheme of this IndyCar driven by Frankenfield, it does remind me of, it brings me back to the old days where IndyCars had I think the old era of IndyCars where I think that there was less emphasis on the development of aerodynamics that we see in the IR18 cars of today. And back then, I would imagine that the competition was much more intense compared to what we see nowadays.
Certainly was a good time in these cars. Some big drivers coming up. Brandon Schoen seems to be a big driver coming up here because he's got it now to 7.5 seconds over Brian Beard. Brian sweating maybe a little bit more looking backwards, but he could look forwards now if he wanted to. I just don't think he has the pace, Wei-Han, because Schoen is, these two have probably been the most consistent, knock on wood for commentators' curse. The only two I don't think we've seen a mistake from yet.
Yeah, I would think so. Look, his gap would appear to be ever increasing, lap after lap. 7.6 seconds as it stands at this time. And I think if within the top 3, the drivers that would make this whole shake-up a little more interesting would be Frankenfield, just because of his previous proximity to the driver in 4th place.
Oh, speaking of Frankenfield, he's already cut this down to 6.2 seconds. Last lap was a 47.9. He comes around turn 1. Compare that to the 48.5 of Brian Beard. Now Beard, I was saying consistent. Well, not exactly consistent. I'm looking at his times. 47.5, a 47.9, and a 48.5 for his last 3 laps. So a little all over the place from the number 5 in 2nd place.
Yeah, would appear so. I think the gap between P2 and 3 is kind of reducing very progressively over the course of the past few laps.
And it's come down yet again. It's 5.6 seconds. Frankenfield taking advantage of that first half of the lap. We're going to watch Beard now. Another note is we're down to 9 cars left on the lead lap of the 12 still running. Greenlee, Burke, and Viguera have all been put laps down. Getting back from Beard. Couldn't really see Frankenfield quite yet. Top
Pit
3
window
though.
should be open. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, yep. So good point, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that. I had lost track of that. So who do we see going in? Top 3 aren't going in. We got a ways back to John Garrett back in 4th, which is what I was about to talk about. Was top 3 have just gapped the field. It's 21 seconds from 3rd to 4th place. A whole 30 seconds, more than 30 seconds from 1st to 4th. Looks like Garrett is also going to stay out. We didn't see many cars come in at the first sign of the pit window opening last time, Wei-Han, so I'm guessing we'll see that again.
Yeah, I mean, in the matter of 1 or 2 laps, I think the first pit maneuver should come into play.
Well, the window is open now, or at least it should be, according to what we were told on fuel, that 15 laps. So 15 times 2, my poor math stupid brain, I guess you could say, I don't know how to put it, can at least do that much. So we are into that second window, and Greenlee has elected to come in. I think that's our only... Nope, Paul Jenkins is in too. Tires for Greenlee. You can see the number 17 looking for his pit stall. And he finds it cleanly. Goes up on the jacks. Tires for him as well. Nobody else came in this time through. Good pit stop for Jenkins. 8 seconds. That's one of the quicker ones we've seen all race long. And our leader pits. There you can see him in the background. And it's a repeat of last time because Beard is going to stay out. So does Frankenfield. Tires for our leader. I don't know if Sean will even fall out of the podium here on his pit stops. Yeah, he'll come back out in 3rd. That is the tremendous gap that has happened between our drivers, because Garrett wasn't even close to him by the time he was coming out. So it looks like Dan Guerin is going to take his final stop. Garrett did not. So this could be a good chance for Guerin to get a good in and out lap, maybe make up some time. Looked like he got a new wing on that car, because I saw that pop back into place.
Do remember that we do have a one free repair
Yeah.
that the drivers can deploy throughout the race. So I think it might have been that he deployed that.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. I did notice in the warm-up as we watch Wubker now take his pit stop, I noticed in the warm-up that a few drivers were hitting those curves a little hard, the apex curves, those yellow pyramids we see out there. And I noticed a wing or two get bent from that. So I wonder if that's what we missed happening to him at some point. Ooh, Beard goes in. Frankenfield stays out, though. The plot thickens. So as Beard takes his service, Frankenfield will be our temporary leader. Schoen comes around. Beard shouldn't probably be close enough to really try and jump him. In fact, Schoen coming across the start-finish line now as Beard just gets rolling. Brandon is easily away from Beard. Any other takers? Beard did come out behind, well, a lot of cars. Yerk, oh, and Garrett just had an off, but Garrett is yet to take his stop. So he's going to have a slowdown penalty, I believe, because he did that through the S's, completely missing an apex. A lot of lap traffic. Vigerta is in there. There's Yerk pulling out of the way, so that's one less car for Beard to worry about. COTA pits while we're watching this. Let's stay with what's happening here. Garrett is fighting him for position, but he is off sequence. So how hard does he fight? That's the big question mark.
Trying to take the slipstream of the car in front of him. John Garrett. Of course, they come onto the hairpin. And while a little bit of movement in front, yeah, that I would believe is lap traffic. And make it through cleanly through that. Yeah.
That's Jose Vigeras just getting out of the way. Nicely done by him. Oh, Beard being held up a little bit here, and Frankenfield is in the pits. So this could be a swap around depending on how much Brian Beard is being slowed down by John Garrett. Frankenfield is just getting to his stall now as we're watching some of that traffic now get out of the way and take their pit stop on lap 33. Frankenfield is up on the jacks. Beard is coming down the front stretch. This is going to be very close. Chad trying to get up to speed. It's going to be a run down into the first corner. He's going to have the inside, and I think he's got the position.
Oh, that was such a close battle. Frankenfield into P2. Brian Beard down to P3. Oh, this is going to be such a great shakeup.
Beard has got to be steaming underneath that helmet. He knows that he got slowed down by that traffic. It was just bad timing, and Frankenfield loses it. Oh, he had the second place for just a split second, and he returns to the track right in front of Vigerta. Ooh, the stewards are not going to be happy about that. I know they warned the drivers before the race about clean re-entry and that they do not tolerate drivers who come across drivers who are on the racing line from off course.
A spin here through the apex of the corner. I think instantaneously he tried to make the move back on, and that's so close.
That was Vigerta that almost ran into him. So it was a lap down car, but I mean, doesn't matter what position they're in. You almost took out another racer for, and you really had to dive across the track for that one.
Yeah, worth noting in mind, keeping in mind that the corner apexes aren't actually exactly as apparent compared to other tracks, just because of the elevation changes. Some places might be a little more blind than the others, hence the lack of visibility at that point.
Guerra is the only one that has yet to pit, but that means we have a chance to go through the field here, starting with our leader with 10 laps to go. Now, once he crosses the line, Brandon Schoen put it on pole to max points in that top qualifier championship. He really has not looked back. The only time he's handed over the lead is during the pit stop sequence. Brian Beard almost lost out on second place. He's behind him. It's about 10 seconds back right now. That is how much he was held up. He was, I think it was about 7 seconds behind Schoen before the pit stops. He's lost a ton of time. The number 5 at this point has dropped Frankenfield with his spin, just trying to get to the end cleanly now. Frankenfield, who is running in third, probably the driver that's kicking himself the most. He qualified in third place. He's sitting there now, but he's had the pace at times to be challenging for this second place. It just hasn't been there. When you get to fourth, it is John Garrett. This is where the drop-off happens on the field. 22 seconds back from third place. But John has also been able to hold up against pressure. He's had Dan Garrett approach him multiple times, only to make his own mistakes and fall away. So John Garrett running something of a quiet race of his own here in fourth. Dan Guerin, definitely not a quiet race. He sits in 5th place. He qualified in 4th and was up to 3rd at the very start. Had a very good start to this race, jumped a few positions in the first lap, but then his own mistakes drew him back to 8th place. He gained a few of them, and then he kept making those mistakes. And the 08 has settled into 5th with 10 laps to go and about a 13-second gap away, Han. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to get up into that 4th spot. What are the next 5 looking like?
So currently in P6 would be Takeshi Kita, who might be almost a lap down, because he's also has some moments of drama of his own throughout the race. He is a whole minute behind the race leader, so that would put him about halfway around the circuit back from where Brandon is. Paul Jenkins down in P7 as he tried to get to him, because he's also had quite an interesting race. I think at one point we've seen him having some battles with up within the top 5, but he lost his ground and he is sitting in 7th at this point. Jeff Wobka in P8 at this point. He is 1.5 minutes away from the race leader, as he's gone on to make that move ahead of the other car there. Down in P9 would be Andy Yerk. Because Andy also having a good race of his own, not actually having gained or lost positions from where he began in qualifying. And we, of course, in P10 we've got Brian Greenlee, who I think he's faced some issues of his own all race long, and he has to settle for P10.
Greenlee a lap down, and then the last 2 cars, Nate Burke is also a lap down. We haven't really shown him on screen much, as he takes a lot of one of those pyramid curves. He's got to be careful with that, how stiffly these cars are sprung. He's about 12 seconds back from Greenlee, and probably too far behind with only 9 laps left to try and catch him. Figueroa, who has gone 2 laps down, and the number 43 is the last car running in 12th place right now. And he's at least soldiering on. We sometimes refer to this as the Dory Award here on GSRC, because he just keeps swimming. And glad to see a driver keep at it, even if he is not necessarily in the hunt for much anymore. There is your 12-car field after both of our pit stops are done. At this point, Wei-Han, if they want to make a pass, they've got to do it on track now.
That's when reality hits you, isn't it? We have what would appear to be 9 to go. Yes, we have 9 laps to go. Almost, I think every driver has already made their pit stops. As we just said, a mistake by Figueroa as he's spun around, I think the second to last, the final corner.
Well, it looks like we don't have the replay on that, but we do have some important information. Car number 2 under investigation, Frankenfield, for an unsafe rejoin. This could make a bad day go very worse. He does have 25 seconds back to Garrett, but I don't think even if he got a drive-through penalty that he'd be able to stay ahead of that number 68. He could slip off the podium if he gets an in-race penalty, which they do hand out in this series. It all depends on how the stewards feel about that, especially with only 8 laps to go. See the car behind him taking a wide exit. That's Andy Yerk, who unfortunately was experimenting with the edges of the track, almost IndyCar style, I guess you could say, appropriately around here, since last season they kind of let the drivers do as they pleased here on the paved runoff.
Yeah, that's the point. When you design circuits with paved runoffs, inadvertently, you would have drivers trying to exploit, or rather trying to maximize their gains from taking this circuit. And I think that's also why that they've got those pyramid cones, or rather pyramid curbs around the apexes. As we ride on board John Garrett.
is our fourth place driver, still about 25 seconds behind Frankenfield. Obviously cannot see him up the road because honestly, Frankenfield's already on the backstretch. We're not even through the S's here. So they're heading opposite directions physically here in the sim. Interesting to note about Frankenfield, though, I'm looking at the time. It was, about 7 seconds up to Brian Beard before? Chad's got it down to 3 seconds now, and it has been closing. So, man, if Chad could just keep his race a little bit cleaner, he clearly is outpacing Beard. He's shooting himself in his own foot.
Yeah, stellar performance by Frankenfield as the gap just hovers around 3.3 seconds. But of course, at this, I remember you brought this up earlier on. At this circuit, there would be areas where some drivers would be better than the others with the different kind of corners. So we could see more ebb and flow in terms of the gap between these two drivers.
Got an update from the stewards. They have announced that there's no further action required on Frankenfield's rejoin. That's the number 2 car. So no penalty for him. That is a sigh of relief for fans of Chad. So he's got it down 3.3 seconds is the gap to Beard. 7 to go. And looking at the lap times now. Actually, let's pull up a comparison between Beard and Frankenfield. Let's see what the differences have been in these recent laps. And see if he is on pace to try and catch him. 2 seconds in one of them. That was lap 34. There must have been a mistake from Beard we didn't quite catch. Half a second, 0.3 of a second. Boy, it's all over the map. 0.8 of a second on lap 37. You've been doing averages so far this race. What's the average real quick on those, way on?
The average, I'm so sorry, I've lost the numbers. All right, thanks. I think would be 149 for, I guess a 149.3 flat there for Beard and for Frankenfield. I would not be able to obtain that number, but you get one that's around 149 to 150.
Okay, so we'll try and see if we can figure out what exactly he's getting into it, because it's down to 2.7 this time by. So waiting for him to cross the line. Frankenfield 47.1 versus Beard with a 47.8, another 0.6 off that lap. If he can keep that 0.6 up, that definitely would get him by with the 6 laps left to go. More than half a second a lap with about 2.5 seconds. That is about 5 laps. So it might be a little bit tight, but it depends on if he's once again slowed up, Wei-Han, by the wake of Beard's car.
Yeah, look, at the rate this goes, I think Frankenfield could well have a chance of going at it with Beard perhaps in the next couple of laps. I think it is entirely possible, given the rate of decrease in the time difference. Now here he comes along the backstretch. Well, I think this is Beard in sight. So, well, here we go.
Yeah, he's definitely got him in sight as we ride on board now. I know his helmet's a little bit, there he is, right there. There is Beard within our view. We come out of the stadium section into the turkey clone. Let's see if he's quicker through this part. It's down to 1.7 through there. Slow corners very much in favor of the number 2 machine. They come to the final turn now. With 5 laps now to go for our drivers. This time by for Beard, that last lap, a 47.6 versus Frankenfield, a 46.8. So that is 8 tenths of a second quicker. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So exactly that. At this point, It's all about how well Frankenfield can keep his advancement consistent in order to reduce, to kind of just narrow in on it over the next couple of laps. Now, I kind of like how, these cars are just plowing through the access tarmac to the left and right of the track. It's just quite nice to just eat up that curb, knowing that you gain that few tenths of a second.
Like the best of exits out of the hairpin for Frankenfield. He's kept it about 1.6, so couldn't have been too bad. Probably feeling a little bit of that slipstream at this point. As he watches that number 5 machine continuing to see what he can do. Beard's not had the greatest of starts to the season. He really needs a good finish, so you have to wonder, how hard does he fight if Frankenfield catches him?
It's down to 1.6 seconds at this point. Come again along the Istanbul clone once again. Worth noting that this is a right-hander one as opposed to the left-handed ones over in Istanbul. Gap down to 1.4 seconds at this point across the final 2 corners, making use of that good AstroTurf by Brian Beard. Trying to maximize all the gain he has. I think the pressure is already mounting on Beard, so at this point he has to hold it well together in order to retain his advantage.
Another half second quicker that time for Chad Frankenfield. Into the S's they go. This is about where we saw him make fewer and fewer gains. So as we ride on board, let's see, can you tell if he's plowing a bit or not? Let's see just how much leeway they have here talking about with some of these curbs.
Coming hard on the brakes for this hairpin on the lead up to this backstretch. Quite a good exit by both cars. Though worth noting that the gap is now down to 0.6 of a second, so well within slipstream and making the attack for Frankenfield. Here they come breaking down into this other hairpin. Of course, Beard having Beard still up front. Chad, I think, made use of the AstroTurf there a little bit, and now they come to this succession of hairpins.
Yeah, Chad certainly looked pretty wide. He's pushing hard. He got a good run on the draft down the backstretch. Just wasn't quite there. Half a second between them. Schoen now taking 3 laps to go ahead of them. So they're ticking down. If Frankenfield's going to make a move, he's got to do it soon, and he's got to keep the car steady. He had the position for a few corners after the pit stops and almost immediately threw it away. He won't want to do that again. They come up to turn 1, and Frankenfield not close enough this time, but again, lap traffic in the way of Beard. That is Vigera trying to stay out of the way, but unfortunately, right exactly where the 5 wanted to put his car.
Yeah, it's just really tricky, when you have a lap traffic, a lap car in front of you, you're kind of being squeezed front and back. And this has inadvertently caused such a compression of the time gap between Frankenfield and Beard. So they're now down to 1/10 of a second. Is this going to be a move down the inside? And pushed wide goes Beard. And P2 goes up to Frankenfield. Fantastic move by him to go up to P2.
Let's look at that one more time. Poor Vigera was just, they caught him in the S's and he couldn't find a way to go. You could tell, watch them, they were both looking for a way by. And unfortunately for Beard, he chose way too long of a way by as he's going to go far off track here. Oh boy. He'll certainly, and once again, I think, is that the same lap traffic that caught him after the pit stops actually? Was it Vigera in that case too? I'm trying to remember. No, it was Garrett, I think it was, excuse me. Either way, lapped cars, or cars he really didn't need to battle, cost him in both cases. Frankenfield is up to second. He's got a half-second gap, and it's 2 laps to go at the line for them here. So, can he hold on to it, and can he keep the mistakes away for 2 more circuits?
lap traffic on their behest. Of course, this is going to compress the field a little more, or rather compress this gap between pit and Franklin field a little bit more when you have the bit of lap traffic. Of course, who would that be? Nate, I think.
Yeah, that's Nate. Nate Burke, excuse me, and Brian Beard was once again compromised on the exit of turn 1, trying to get by him. So it's gone up to 1.1 second from that. He's seen that second place slip away. This is all with this battling now caused Schoen to be a full 14 seconds ahead. The 98 is doing very well for himself today. Trying to see if he also has any lap traffic. I see Wubker a little bit up in front of him. He's the car in 8th place. If he can get by him before this is over, that'll mean only 7 cars on the lead lap at the end of this thing. To note that Dan Guerin, trying to fight his way back forward, put in the fastest lap of the race. 47.153 for him that time. That's been amongst a few more errors in the process. He had a half spin on lap 39. Don't need to go to it, but that's why he has not caught John Garrett, despite being lightning quick out there. Speaking of being lightning quick, white flag is out for our leader in this race. Even if he doesn't have the fastest overall lap, he doesn't need it. The 98 has been schooling the field today.
Sure he is. Of course, I think it has been and only been him. Starting from the race lead, leading the race all throughout every single lap, except the pit stop part of this race. And he's kind of put up such a huge gap ahead of everyone else that I think nobody else really had a chance against him.
Certainly didn't seem like it. Once he started to pull that gap on Beard, it was good night to the rest of the field. Beard certainly made him work for it for a little while, made sure that he didn't drop off too fast. But in the end, it doesn't matter how little you're losing. If you don't finish ahead of them, you don't get the points for that first position. Shown now into the stadium section. It was Chris Stouffer who was the man to beat in the first 2 rounds, and he took those first 2 victories, but those were ovals, and Stouffer's not here today. So Brandon Schoen, with an open goal, put it on pole position, went out there, stormed the field, and managed to take this one by the throat. Brandon Schoen, your winner today here in Texas for the first road course round of the Throwback Series, the IndyCar Throwback Series. Back to second place. Beard closing back in on Frankenfield. It's gone back to 0.5 of a second. All he needs to do is be smooth, and Frankenfield with a podium this time. Chad will be happy about that one. Brian Beard rounds out your podium. And then you got a whole 30 seconds back to John Garrett, still on his lonesome. Garrett qualified in 5th, up 1 position from the start of the race. The 68 managing just to finish off of that podium. What about poor Dan Guerin? Spare a thought for this guy. Needs a little bit more practice, it seems. As though he's got the speed, he doesn't have the consistency. He's going to get a top 5, but I have a feeling he'll be a little bit disappointed by that. Takeshi Kita behind him, though, going from 8th to 6th, and at one point getting 3 cars within 1 corner. I'd say the number 30 should be pretty pleased with this. Last 2 cars on the lead lap are Jenkins in 7th, and Wubker and in 8th. Not really close to one another, so they're just going to cruise home. So we're going to go to break while we let them come to the line. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because after this, we have the Rogue Energy post-race show, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Circuit of the Americas here in Texas. We just watched round 3 of the Throwback Indycar Series. And in the end, Brandon Schoen is our second winner of the season here on the Rogue Energy post-race show. Rogue Energy Drink is designed to replace unhealthy canned energy drinks, coffee, and even traditional pre-workouts. Rogue Energy is sugar-free and loaded with vitamins, antioxidants, and nootropics. Scoop, shake, drink, win. Use promo code UCORA Indy to get 10% off of your purchases at rogueenergy.com. And as you can see, our results with Brandon Schoen, the victor by a 17-second margin over Chad Frankenfield from third to second. He had to work his way up a few times. Brian Beard could not hold him back. It seemed to be lap traffic was the bane of his existence today. John Garrett finished in fourth with Dan Guerin all over the map, but still managing a top 5. Takeshi Kita with a well-earned 6 was followed by Paul Jenkins in 7th. Last car on the lead lap was Wubker in 8th and Andy Yurt in 9th. Brian Greenlee rounds out the top 10. Way on.
Coming home in P11 is Nate Burke. And also in P12 will be Jose Miguel Felipe Viguera. Of course, himself also having had an interesting race of his own. These two would appear to be the finishers of the race here tonight at Circuit of the Americas. We've also got Richard Swavely, who might have dropped off somewhere earlier on in the race, as well as Robert Blue and Peter Brennan and Eric Jeffers. These guys round up your 16 entrants for the race tonight.
And we have our winner ready to talk to us. Brandon Schoen joins us here in the booth. Brandon, congratulations. Granted, you did not have Chris Stouffer here, but it looks like you made good on it without him being here because that was domination today. Brandon, do you have a copy? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Man, I'm wiped out. I'm tired. That was a long race.
It seemed like it. And that's a good point. It brings us to the topic of this track. We saw a lot of mistakes from drivers out there. You didn't really seem to show any major ones that we caught on camera. I mean, did you need ultra focus with this car and track combination? It looked very tricky.
Yeah, for sure. I had 2 off-track incidents just from cutting corners too close. But other than that, I was really proud of my lap times. If you go back and look at them, they're all very, very consistent. The last 6 laps were all within 0.7 of a second. So nothing to be ashamed of there.
Certainly not, and certainly shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that you had that 17-second gap come the end of the race. I mean, were you getting a little nervous at all when you started coming upon traffic? Because that actually played a part in the battles behind you.
Yeah, a little bit. I had two guys spin out in front of me, two separate instances. But other than that, just try to focus and keep my line, keep everything very consistent the entire time. That was my goal. Not slow down on the last lap. I tried to make that my fastest lap of the race. I'm not sure if I did or not, but that was my goal.
Fantastic stuff. Regardless, before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank for this victory?
Yeah, I got to thank Brian Peel, 94 Motorsports, for sponsoring this deal. I got to thank Scott for managing it, making the setups, all that kind of stuff. He does a great job, and just really enjoying it. Glad to be
Uh,
a part of it.
well, we're glad to be a part of it as well. And that was Brandon Schoen, our winner here today in round 3. Up next, we have Wei-Han talking to someone who is a little bit of a hanging Chad on one of the other drivers. It is Chad Frankenfield.
Hey Chad, wow, what a race you put up for all of us today. You know, taking P2 just towards the last few laps, last few minutes of the race. You know, that was such an exhilarating viewing experience for us as well. Now, could you share with us a little bit more about how you, I guess, having stuck in P3 all race long to make the move. And the lead up to making the move up to P2, could you talk us through the whole experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a really tough race. Track's really demanding. Car is really unstable. Really, you get off the throttle and the car would really want to snap on you, so it made it real difficult, especially on light fuel. But yeah, I didn't think coming into the race I was going to have anything with those front two guys, and as the race went on, I noticed my times were just as good or better, and so I just was pushing like hell. Eventually I got to P2 and spun it out in first gear, and then I was super aggressive entering the pits, my last stop, and then got out front of Brian, and then again, stupid mistake, just pushing too hard on cold tires. This is the first time I ever drove this car on a road course, so obviously some things I can work on to get better. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting race. I was running Q laps almost, maybe 35 of the 44 laps were Q laps.
Well, look, I think a lot of credit to yourself for such a performance. I think the fact is that you just made it all work out in the end, and that secured your P2 finish. Now, before we let you go, would you like to have give a shout out to any sponsors or anyone you'd like to thank?
Sure, yeah, I'd like to thank Speed51.com, Elite Racing League. Obviously, I want to thank Scott and everybody here with this league. This is a really cool league. With my schedule, my fiance's work schedule, this league works perfect for me to run. I just appreciate everything Scott's doing. This league's top of the line, and just glad to get to run some Indycars. And again, thank you guys for broadcasting it, obviously, too.
That was Chad Frankenfield, second place finisher today. He was followed home by Brian Beard, who was ahead of him for much of the race. Brian, I have to imagine that, one, you're pleased about finally getting a good finish so far this season, but two, I can't imagine you're terribly pleased about how the lap traffic went today. It seemed like that was a deciding factor for you out there.
Yeah, that was a killer. Tough race, really was. But yeah, I think that the lap traffic was kind of the death of me tonight. I made a mistake pitting a lap early, thinking to avoid that last stint, and I came out behind 4. So, that's okay. Brandon and Chad, those guys were fast. They really were, and they ran a great race.
Not to rub salt in the wounds, but you were one of the only 2 drivers really we saw not make mistakes out there. You and Schoen, only 2 we can really recall not seeing some sort of spin or off course during the race, or at least a cut course during the race. I asked Brandon about the Focus. What about with you? Is this one that you find a little bit tougher on the roadside for the IndyCar?
Oh, absolutely. This track is pretty brutal, especially when you get to about lap 30. You start to get a little bit sore, and yeah, it gets to be tough. Yeah, I just try to concentrate on not making mistakes, but it kind of cost me a little bit of speed. And then when Chad started to pull up on me, then I took off. And every time I tried to push the car, the back end would want to step out on me. So I just had to keep a good steady pace. And wherever the cars fell, that's where I was going to end up.
Well, as I said, it certainly netted you quite a few points. From here, though, it seems that you're back into things a little bit now that you've got a good finish. You've got the speed from what we've seen in the first two rounds and this one as well. Do you eye a championship run, or is it just for fun from here?
Oh, I totally want to win another one. Definitely. Yeah, I had a couple of bad luck races, the first two, but it's a long season, and I'll just keep pushing. And real quick, I want to thank my sponsor, 94motorsports.com, and our series sponsor, and D2 Race Designs.
Awesome stuff. That was Brian Beard, always the professional, who finished third today and getting himself his first podium of the season. That's going to wrap up our interviews. So we got to thank our sponsors. Once again, a big thanks to our sponsor for the post-race show, Rogue Energy. They have a promo code UCORAINDY to allow you to get 10% off your purchases at rogueenergy.com. Make sure and do that. Huge thanks to them for sponsoring this post-race show. Also to Midwest Simulations. They have a promo code as well. If you go to their website, that is Throwback, where you can get their Spotlight visual spotter system. And also, of course, to D2 Race Designs for sponsoring the qualifying competition that we have in this series. They are providing a button box for that. Thanks goes out to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can see them listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Wei Hong, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. You can also check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us here on GSRC, we've got a merchandise store. It's linked here below the YouTube video there in the description. It's gsrc.storeenv.com. And while you're down there, click the big red button that says subscribe. That way you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race is back to ovals. We're going to Kansas. We're staying in the heartland here. It'll be Thursday, March 26th at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. But we have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard. See you on the track.